I encounter a lot of young people who are very anxious about the future. And that on its own is not anything out of the ordinary. That's just part of being young. But recently, we've had everything from the COVID lockdowns. I mean, we've had traumatic events in our past, with traumatic, like looking on the news, which affects our entire generation, whether it's Challenger, Kennedy for the older people, 9/11. These young people, COVID wasn't really a singular event, but there's this low level kind of trauma every single day. You're a little bit afraid. That really affected them. But then we have the double whammy with AI. And AI is coming in, and there's this pressure to both use AI and yet realizing kind of horrifyingly, this thing might be replacing me. And I think a lot of young people are very anxious that maybe the future doesn't have a place for them. They no longer belong to the future. The regular chain of you grow up, you get a job, you do that whole thing. AI it's almost racing ahead of where the jobs are. It used to be technology would create jobs, but the AI seems to be gobbling up the jobs as it goes. And it's just a lot of anxiety among young people. So I knew I wanted to have that young person. He's, early 20s, has a bit of that adolescent voice still. And he's just trying to figure out, where am I going with my life?
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 422 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. In today's episode, I have an interview with Patrick MacPhee. Now, in addition to being a writer, Patrick considers himself very lucky to have spent the last 20 years helping young people become better versions of themselves in his role as a teacher, which he absolutely adores. He adores the teaching, and he adores the students. Now, he's learned that almost every part of the curriculum has room for a little humor, sometimes a lot of humor. That comes up in this interview. In this forthcoming interview, we talk about his teaching career, that humor, as well as his writing, his reading, and what inspired him to write the Writers of the Future award-winning story, 30 Minutes or It's a Paradox. We have a fantastic discussion, and that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Manuscript Report. At manuscriptreport.com, you can get absolutely amazing and insightful marketing support and help for your books. One of the most frustrating things we do as authors is writing a synopsis or writing press releases or writing sales copies, etc. I've been so amazed with Manuscript Report in terms of the ease of use and just how simply you load your manuscript in a PDF format, and about within 20 minutes, you get back a 21 to 23 page document that gives you searchability keywords for helping enhance your book, some sales copy, press releases, different audiences, tropes and themes that are in the book, as well as really cool sales copies. And here's an example for one of my manuscripts that I loaded for a Canadian werewolf in New York. Now, this is the comparisons/narrative crossroads section of the report, which is just a couple of pages. Here's the first one. In bold, it says, "The Dresden Files meets The Hangover in a werewolf's New York adventure." And then the text goes into where urban fantasy novel meets mystery comedy book. Dive into a Canadian werewolf in New York where the supernatural intrigue of Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files collides with the comedic chaos of The Hangover. Follow Michael Andrews, a werewolf protagonist, as he navigates the bustling streets of New York City, blending mystery, humor, and supernatural thrills in a lighthearted fantasy. What sets it apart? While the Dresden Files focuses on magical detective work, this story adds a comedic twist exploring identity and duality with a humorous fantasy lens. Why you can't miss it? If you love urban fantasy novels with a mix of mystery and comedy, this character-driven narrative by Canadian author Mark Leslie is a must-read. Now that's the first one of the options I got. The other option, the title says, Twilight meets Brooklyn Nine-Nine in a supernatural mystery. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says where romantic fantasy meets humorous fantasy, etc., etc., and it gives a full paragraph there. And then the last one, which I really enjoyed, was An American Werewolf in London Meets Friends in a Supernatural Thriller. And so these are just some of the examples of the cool things you can get by loading your manuscript to manuscriptreport.com. And if you want to save $5, you can use my affiliate code MARK5. That's MARK, the number 5, the numeral 5. And for anyone who has tested out and used Manuscript Report, I'd love to hear from you. I've had a few clients that I've sent over to Manuscript Report, and they've shared what they've gotten back from Manuscript Report, and they've been absolutely delighted. You'll be delighted too if you check them out at manuscriptreport.com, and don't forget to save $5 using the code MARK5, MARK, number 5. In terms of comments from recent episodes, for episode 420, artist and author collaboration with J.J. McPhee, over at the comment section at starkreflections.ca, Edwin Downward said, "What I got out of this episode is a two-part reflection. First, the value of having even one person around you who supports your passion and encourages you to keep at it. The second is the value of seeking out people who can do the things you can't do. This can range from editors to cover artists to formatters, people who can help you get the word out about your works. We are a community, and no one has to do it all by themselves if that is too overwhelming for them." Thank you, Edwin, for that fantastic reflection. I love that you got so much out of this conversation with J.J. McPhee. It was fun. It was fun to meet the author. It was fun to see the book, and it was fun to learn about the behind the scenes and the partnership and finding those people that can help you do the things that you're not maybe the best at. For example, for the most part, professional narrators for my audiobooks, for my fiction at least, because, Scott Overton and the other narrators I've had over the years have done such an amazing job with my books. And speaking of narrators, Aaron Fors as well, who's done several short stories for me. I got back the audio rights to Death, which was published with a small Canadian publisher, and they never made the audiobook. So a few years ago, they gave me the audio rights back for the audiobook. And so I've sent that over to Aaron, and he's going to do Death for me. And this is sort of a transition from the comment and into some cool stuff for my patrons, because as you remember, for my patrons back in May, I put up a form and said, hey, do you want to work with a cool audiobook narrator like Aaron? And several of you filled out the forms and said, yeah, I'd be interested in having a short story done that I, Mark, Stark Reflections, will pay for, thanks to the generosity of my awesome patrons. I just wanted to sort of pay that back into the community. And particularly if you haven't done audiobooks, you're going to have those done. So I've already reached out to, and congratulations to, two of my patrons. Edwin, aforementioned, Edwin will have to comment. We're going to be doing one of Edwin's short stories with Aaron, which I'm pretty excited about because Edwin has not yet done any audiobooks. And Maddie Dalrymple as well. Yes, my co-author for a couple books, which would be the Taking the Short Tack about short fiction, as well as just released last week, the podcast guest playbook. And I think Maddie is interested in checking out working with somebody like Aaron for one of her short stories that she hasn't yet put into audio that's related to one of her series. So that is so amazing and so awesome. So a huge thank you to all of the patrons who support this podcast. Also, I have the manuscript report. I have also nobody took advantage of that, which is weird. I thought people might want to take advantage of that. So what I'm going to do is in the next couple weeks, I'll post another link to for my patrons for the form, so they can fill out the form and potentially you have me pay for that manuscript report sample for them. But other cool things that are coming up is I've got another special audio only for patrons that are coming up. I also have a special video coming up. So I just interviewed Dominic Shearer, who runs an independent bookstore. He's an independent author who decided the best way to get his books into bookstores was to just open his own shop. And he supports indie authors. He's carried my Canadian Werewolf in New York for a while, and he does a video tour that we did after the interview. He's like, hey, let's do a tour. And he grabbed his laptop and walked outside and just did a tour of the store and the shop so you can kind of see what was going on in the shop. And that will be available to everyone publicly in the future when that episode comes out in the next month or so. But I want my patrons to get access to that video early, because why not give you guys something extra, something special for all of the amazing support that you give me over at patreon.com/starkreflections, as well as the support that you give me on buymeacoffee.com/Mark Leslie, my coffee buddies over there. So yeah, you get that video very shortly, and you'll also get a special audio. I had read something online. I was inspired by it. It was a story about Christopher Reeve. Anyone who's seen my talks, I've recently in talks about author branding, I talk about the way that Christopher Reeve played Clark Kent and Superman, and just how perfect he nailed the branding of each of those characters, and he owned those personas. It wasn't just removing his glasses. It was so much about everything he did. Such a committed, such a brilliant actor. And this was a story about him and his acting. And when I read it, I was thinking, yeah, we can learn from that as writers. So that'll be going out. That's the special thoughts will be going out in a special audio for my patrons. It'll also end up going out in my Stark Reflections newsletter as well. Just some of that additional content and my thoughts and reflections, often based on stuff I'm talking about for the show. But oh my goodness, I'm rambling. I think I need to pause, play a bumper, and do, I guess, sort of a personal update kind of thing. All right, so personal update. It is so much going on. I've been on the road a lot, some personal stuff, funeral last week as well, and I'm getting back on the road tomorrow. So I'm actually recording this on Tuesday, June 24th, and on the 25th I'm going to be driving down to Philadelphia. I'm going down there for the ALA conference, the American Library Association conference. Now, I personally, as a writer, have been a member of the ALA for the past couple of years. It's an organization I believe in, I value libraries. I'm going down there. I actually have a table under Stark Publishing, but I'm going there with dual hats on. I'm there, obviously, as me, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, the Stark Publishing guy, and I also have a table that's basically going to be basically Stark Publishing presents Draft to Digital. And I just picked up the catalogs. I've got 500 full-color glossy catalogs, 32 pages of books from independent authors. What I have is the opening is, here are the top, I think it's the top 15 or 20 fiction titles this year so far that have been selling, this was from, I guess, the beginning of the year till May. These are the top sellers that are available to libraries. And all it needed to be was published to one or more of the library platforms from Draft to Digital. And that would be, Overdrive, BorrowBox, Adillo, Baker & Taylor, Biblioteca/Cloud Library, Palace Marketplace, and Hoopla, any of those places. And what I did is, for every single book that was listed, I put the logo of the company where the librarians could purchase it. So, if they're only publishing to so many platforms, I only put those logos. But if they're using D2D print, I also put Ingram, because that means the library can buy the ISBN for the print book from Ingram. And so that catalog has that. It has some, anticipated pre-orders. So it has like July, August, September, and then fall and, sort of winter titles, like all the way up to the end of the year. And it's just a selection of books that are going to be coming out, because a lot of librarians are looking at front list titles. So that's why I put that up front. And then I have some other like feature splashes, like some series, some series starters. Like here's some books and authors you may want to look at, some recommendations. There's even some special print pages where we took a look at Draft to Digital print authors and put their ISBNs in there so librarians can get those print books, and even a section at the end of books for writers that librarians can help. And again, I went with only books that are featured on that page, and I only did 6 because I didn't have room to put a lot there. I only put in books where both the ebook and the print book were available through Draft to Digital to libraries, because I wanted to support those authors who are using that system as well. There's also some sheets that introduce librarians to Megan Spann, who does the promotions, and say, hey, if you need custom lists, like authors from this state or this city, or books on different themes or whatever, and you're looking for really good value books from amazing independent authors, we've got you covered. Just reach out to us and we'll send you a list. And the other thing, authors are usually willing to participate in promotional activities, which we do a lot of with our library partners, Overdrive and Hoopla, etc. And so I am so looking forward to going there and representing independent authors. And I've got some extra overstock of some of my titles, since it is, the Stark booth. I thought, well, in case there's librarians who are looking for swag, I have some printed overstock of several of my own titles, and I thought, why the heck not say, hey, here's a physical copy, but this the inside of every single one of my Stark books, the copyright page, has the ISBNs for all the different editions, and so I've got some overstock, and so that I can at least be giving them some swag that might attract them to the table. But that's going to be a busy week as we wrap up the end of June. Liz and I have some family stuff regarding our my stepdaughter, middle daughter, is heading out to Victoria, and has Liz's car because she's making the trip across the country. So Liz and I need to fly out there so we can drive the car back. Of course, the tricky part there is once I get back from this conference just at the beginning of July, and I'm going to be at RWA, Romance Writers of America conference, in the middle of July in Niagara Falls, Ontario, just not too far from where I am here in Waterloo. And so the trick is, on the drive back, we may not make it all the way before. I might have to just stop and maybe in Calgary or something or whatever and grab a flight so I can get back home so I can get ready for the next trip. My summer is delightfully a whole bunch of trips. I've got a whole bunch of other things planned that are coming up in July and August. I'm like, oh my God, this summer feels like it's almost over, and it hasn't even just begun. It is a fantastic heat wave. And I say a fantastic heat wave because it was so bloody cold, even in early June and at the end of May, that I, even though, yes, it is unbearably hot, and it's, for American listeners, the equivalent with the humidity here where we have, it's like 100 to 110, 112 with the humidity. It's only about 90 to 98 maybe in terms of heat, but it's been in the low to mid 30s, and then it'd be the low to mid 40s with the humidity in terms of Celsius. But anyways, I'm trying to enjoy the heat as much as possible because it was such a bitter spring, a bitterly cold spring. So I do want to enjoy that as much as possible. I have so many writing projects on the go. I'm not even going to get into what's going on right now and the backlog of stuff, but I am really encouraged to get my butt back in gear on a book in hand so I can release that later this year. And one of the reasons I want to get finished on that book and get it out the door is I really need to keep going on, again, the half-completed, an author's guide to branding for success. But that's it for my rambling personal update. I had a fantastic chat with Patrick MacPhee, and I'm going to roll the bumper, and you're going to get it. You're going to... Is the heat getting to me? You're going to get a chance to listen to the conversation that we just had yesterday. And that would have been Monday, June 23rd, 2025. But without further ado, here's Patrick MacPhee. Hey, Patrick, welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thanks very much for having me, Mark. It's fantastic to be here. Good to see you again, by the way.
Yeah, good to see you again. Both of us had to go all the way to the West Coast down in California to see each other, even though we live like an hour away from one another, right?
Yeah, well, that'll be good.
So you are this year's, I guess, this year's Canadian winner. There was a Canadian winner last year, the Canadian winner of the Writers of the Future. Now, Writers of the Future, Volume 41 was just released internationally, right? UK and other countries too.
Yeah, just a few days ago, and apparently it's selling out in various places, and people are really enjoying it. And it's just fantastic to see hitting various bestseller charts and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's all a dream come true. It's really fantastic.
So I want to get into your story because as one of the judges, it's always so fun. We read a bunch of stories. We have no idea who wrote them, and then we go, "Oh, you wrote that one." So it's so kind of when we get to meet you at the event. We don't even know who the people are of the stories that we've read. We just go, "Oh, you made it, and you wrote that one. That's cool." So because again, it's almost a fun. I mean, it's more of a surprise when you get to see your artwork and stuff. But I am getting ahead of myself. Before
Okay.
we get to the exciting moment of finding out you were a winner and then getting flown into Hollywood and spending a week there, let's go back to was it 8-year-old Patrick who wanted to read a more adult-sized book?
Yeah, I am not quite sure exactly how old I was, but I know that Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, was dramatically higher than my reading level at the time. And
Right.
as a teacher, I know that if kids actually like the stuff they're reading, your effective grade level goes up maybe 2 grade levels, sometimes more. This
Wow.
was probably 3 or 4 above me. And
Right.
because of that, I actually had this huge benefit because number one, I had no preconceptions about reading large books whatsoever. It was all completely a blank slate for me.
Right.
And the second is that it forced me to read very, very slowly. And if you're reading very fast, and I mean, unfortunately, those of us we get older, we get better at reading. You're almost just skimming through really fast. But if you're reading very slowly, the mind has a lot more time to interpret and use your imagination. And I wasn't just reading slowly; I would just pause and be daydreaming, and suddenly realize, oh, I haven't read it all for the last 20 minutes. I'm imagining myself in Bree or going through the forest, or I would check the maps and I'm actually looking through these maps thinking, well, that's cool. And it was an incredible experience as a kid. And I've said a few times, but when you're a kid, you don't just do things as a pastime. You don't just read, you don't just play a game. I was playing like only a kid could play. I was playing in Middle Earth. And that's
Okay.
an experience that I've always wanted to get back. That month where I was reading along with Frodo and Sam and the others trying to get to Rivendell, and when I finally got there, there's this, oh, we made it. All right. I was in doubt for a second there, and it's just a fantastic, magical experience. And now, whenever I read or whenever I write, I'll like general fiction every now and then, but that speculative aspect to me, it's like the spice in cooking. It just
Right.
adds that little extra zest to it that automatically attracts me. So here
Right.
I
Right.
am.
Well, it's funny. So that first seminal work for you was obviously Fellowship of the Rings, and in that fantastical world, right? The grandfather of modern epic fantasy,
Oh yeah,
and yet your
Grandpa
story is
Tolkien.
something that would fit on an episode of like The Twilight Zone or Black Mirror. You know what I mean, with the time travel
Hmm.
and a little bit more science fiction-y aspects as opposed to fantastical creatures. So let's get into the first sort of story that you remember wanting to write, because you wanted to, obviously you wanted to be a reader, you wanted to be a writer. Do you remember what that was? Was it sort of epic fantasy? Was it Tolkien inspired?
I think it was at the time when I was very young, I would write. It was basically fan fiction. And I'm not knocking fan fiction. If there are young people out there watching this, write your fan fiction, enjoy it. It's a great
Yeah.
way to just have fun with something and to expand your scope as a writer. For me, however, oh boy, I remember watching this Merlin mini series in the 90s. It was nice, like Sam Neill. And it wasn't that that particular show was extra inspirational, but I liken it to the snowflake on the snow pile. Just that last snowflake caused it all to shift. And I finally thought, maybe I can write something like this. I mean, why not? And right then, that night, I had these little yellow notepads and I roughed out this 5 book epic fantasy series because, of course, I was an arrogant young man. So why not? And oddly enough, I've completed the first sort of book of that. It's gone through a lot of revisions.
Wow.
And I realized along the way I was not nearly talented enough to write this book that I wanted to write. But you have to have it's weird. It's a combination of arrogance to think that you can actually do this thing and people would read it, and yet humility to keep circling back to, okay, what do I need to do to improve upon it? And I think the humility aspect, I got some great feedback, whether it's from Dave Wolverton submitting stories to the contest, a few other magazines I submitted to as well. They were telling me, you got to work on whether it's pacing or description or whatnot, or your intros or, and I put all these together. I went online and I looked at all these different sources and I ended up writing that book. And it's still in the query trenches. I modified it again. So it went from 150,000 words down to 135. And I thought, for sure, is it good enough? No. Oh, okay, okay. So my two-thirds crisis point is now the climax,
Yeah.
and I've rearranged a few of my other things as well. So I've got 105,000 words. So
Wow.
just got to tinker with the ending a little bit, get it just a little sweeter,
Right.
and off it goes. So
Wow. Okay.
from that, I mean, I guess getting back to the sci-fi angle, I remember watching The Twilight Zone, the original and the newer ones, both with my mom and just on my own. Uh, Twilight Zone, there was The Outer Limits as well, a few shows like that. Just
Yeah.
the idea of you're kind of stepping outside of reality, and that can be wonderful, but it can also be horrifying.
Yeah.
I like analog horror as well. Those goofy backrooms videos. I'll get sucked into that, Slender Man and whatnot. I guess the sci-fi influence for me, probably Neal Stephenson influenced me a lot. I
Okay.
just love his prose, the way that he can make he can make normal stuff more magical, and he can make the fantastic more relatable. He just like twists everything just a little bit, and I
Right.
kind of like that. Like there was one line in my story where I mentioned this girl she's a she's like an ancient fey princess dancing around a ring of plastic mushrooms. And I was trying to channel my inner Stevenson there with stuff like that. Just love that strange attractor. You have the most boring setting possible, a pizzeria, and yet strange things are happening at the pizzeria this evening, my friends.
Yeah.
And that's what we
So with that teaser, let's get into the story. Let's get into the 30 minutes or its paradox. That
All
which
right.
which was one of the winners of this year's Writers of the Future. Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
And thank you for writing such an awesome story.
Hey, my pleasure.
It's always a pleasure as a judge when you get to read these really amazing stories and then finally meet the people who wrote them. So 30 minutes or it's a paradox. What's the sort of log line or what's the sort of the one or two liners that explains what is this story about?
Well, there's 22-year-old Terry Johnson is down and out. He's in this dead-end pizza delivery job, which he hates. He's just at that age where his dreams of what he wants to do are rapidly diverging from his boring reality of what life is taking him towards. And he literally crashes into the ultimate get-rich-quick scheme himself from the future. And there's a little bit of the genie out of the bottle, the monkey's paw, but basically he's traveled back in time to teach himself how to invent time travel.
Hmm.
And I went into the story with that concept because I would have students who would say, "Sir, do you believe in time travel?" And I said, "Well, of course. I'm just waiting for the day when I travel back to teach myself how to invent it." And that's a bit, I don't know if you've seen Bill and Ted where they have the time travel battles at the
Yeah,
end, like we're gonna set up a cage, dude, and it kind of lends itself to comedy. So I automatically knew that this was going to be funny, this was going to be whimsical, and yet I didn't let the comedy get ahead of it. I think that can be a danger with comedy, where it can kick you out of the story if it gets too meta or gets too ridiculous.
right.
Because there's this thread of this. Okay, I'm going way over a typical log line here.
That's
Sorry.
okay. That's okay. We're into talking about the story.
Here we go. Uh, there's this thread of we have this young man who is he's not in a good mental place and he's trying to figure out what kind of future he wants. And he has a golden opportunity to get some glimpses into potential futures, some of them positive, some of them very negative, where whether it's family, fame, wealth, power, or something else entirely. And it's just I don't know like a ghost of Christmas future are coming as well. So I think that's what really ties the story together. The comedy's there. There's banter between all these characters, bit of a sitcom. I liken it to a tornado in a phone booth, how it's just more and more ridiculous.
Yeah.
I guess a screwball comedy has been said as well. It's just it spirals. But that's where I ended up with it.
So I think you had mentioned that the theme or what you were thinking about when you wanted to write about this, I think it had to do with the class and students, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I encounter a lot of young people who are very anxious about the future. And that on its own is not anything out of the ordinary. That's just part of being young. If you look at any coming of age or YA kind of story beats, young person anxious about that, that's just standard. But recently, we've had everything from the COVID lockdowns, which I mean, we've had traumatic events in our past, what traumatic, like looking on the news, which affects our entire generation, whether it's Challenger, Kennedy for the older people, 9/11. These young people, COVID wasn't really a singular event, but there's this low level kind of trauma every single day. You're a little bit afraid. That really affected them. And they're coming out of it. They're very strong. They're resilient. I can see them getting better. I'm sure your wife sees that as well in her line of work as well. The young people are improving, but then we have the double whammy with AI, and AI is coming in, and there's this pressure to both use AI and yet realizing kind of horrifyingly this thing might be replacing me. And I think a lot of young people are very anxious that maybe the future doesn't have a place for them. They no longer belong to the future. The regular chain of you grow up, you get a job, you do that whole thing. AI it's almost racing ahead of where the jobs are. It used to be technology would create jobs, but the AI seems to be gobbling up the jobs as it goes. And it's just a lot of anxiety among young people. So I knew I wanted to have that young person. He's, early 20s, has a bit of that adolescent voice still, and
Yeah.
he's just trying to figure out where am I going with my life.
And lo and behold, a fantastic story that, award-winning story. Is that you've been writing before that? I want to talk a little bit about the submission process and all that stuff. But had you
Yeah.
had stories published before in other places prior to this win?
I've had a couple of short stories published in semi-pro magazines. I had something in a Canadian magazine, Neo, which is
Oh my God,
actually
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
that was my first paid credit. That was a time traveler, oddly enough. And two guys are at a bar and they're having a bet, and one guy says, "There's no way time travel's possible because we would have met a time traveler by now. In the whole of human history, someone would have come back to say hi. So therefore, time travel cannot exist philosophically." So he's reaching across the table to grab this $100 bill when a time traveler shows up. And the guy's like, "Hey, can you tell me what day it is?" And it's just it. There is a bit of a twist ending that, well, I won't spoil it,
Well, I know.
but
I'm looking forward to reading that one too.
oh yeah, that's actually on my website,
Oh,
patrickmacphee.com. I've got a story section, so it's there for the reading.
oh my God,
And
a sweet surprise for us. That's fantastic.
yeah, I've got that. I've tried my hand at fantasy as well, which I had a oh boy, I had a story Shattered, which was I think it was Silverleaf Review. I keep getting it mixed up. It's quite a few years ago. So I've had a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy, but took a little hiatus from writing for a while, really like drilled down into career, had, the young kids, helping them out as
Yeah.
well. And then I really wanted to get the novels done. So I focused on that. And now that I've been through Writers of the Future and especially that amazing workshop down in Hollywood, I'm thinking I have my short story mindset awakened again as well. So I'm enjoying writing short stories again. I wrote one for the Bain Fantasy Contest, and if it wins, great. If not, I've got this nice story I'll shop around, and
Yeah.
I've got a few that are just on the plate all the time, just ready to go.
Oh,
So it's a
fantastic.
lot of
So
fun.
how did you hear about you'd mentioned making submissions when Dave Farland was the head judge. So obviously it goes back a few years
Oh
because
yeah.
sadly we lost Dave a few years ago. But how did you find out about the contest?
Well, I looked at the typical magazine submission thing like Submission Grinder, Duotrope, a few of the others, because I had heard if you want to do novels, you want to get some short story credits, both as practice. And at the time, younger me thought, I'll just get a few credits so I can send this to agents. I didn't realize at the time, you're actually practicing this whole beginning, middle, ending, dialogue, characters, and you can wrap that all up in maybe a week or two and then move on to the next one and the next one. So anyway, as I had these stories I was hoping to ship out there, I would regularly encounter writers of the future. And I immediately thought, oh, this is too big for me, professional. I don't know. I read a few of the anthologies, some of the stories. Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. So initially, I was hesitant to submit, which I realized was a mistake because a lot of people, I think, if you just get into this habit of every quarter, send in a new story. Some people send in the same story over and over again. I would humbly submit if you've received some feedback on the story and you're changing it in a way conducive to that, then maybe submit the same story. But if you try to do a new story every quarter, even if they don't win, over a few years, as you're growing as a writer, you have this entire library of potential stories now that you can use. So I eventually submitted, and the first entry I had was a space opera set in the far future where human beings swap bodies as easily as we swap clothes. And it offered a disturbing conclusion to the Fermi paradox, and that was a semifinalist. And
Wow.
I was told it was almost a finalist as well, except that had a slow start. The pacing was kind of off. And I thought, okay, pacing, pacing. Well, you saw my 30 minutes where it's a paradox story. I think I solved my pacing
Oh, you
problem
solved the
there.
pacing problem. Yeah, yeah.
Boy, that's breathless. Like,
Well, you put that in a 400-degree oven instead of letting it slowly warm up.
you got it. You got it. That's how pizza, that's, you get the best pizza that way, of course.
Yeah. Oh man.
But next quarter, I submitted, boy, my fantasy story as well, which that was semifinalist too. So I thought, okay, I've got some talent here. I've had professionals in the field telling me, yeah, you can write. You just have a few things to work on. And
Right.
I just want to mention the workshop, the Writers of the Future workshop. There was something on there where they said a lot of writers spend a lot of time focusing on their craft to the point where maybe you don't need to be a Nobel Prize winning, Pulitzer Prize winning, this super flowery, amazing stuff that people just walk by and think, oh, my life has changed. I mean, if you can do that, that's great. Don't get me wrong. But if you can write just good enough to get the story started, and then just focus on the story, which of course only occurs in the imagination of the reader. And that was a big shift for me that I'm just lighting a fuse, but that has to go off inside the reader's mind. And I had that idea for 30 minutes of, or it's a paradox. I just was focusing on the reader experience, fun, fast paced. That's what I was going for.
Oh, I love that. And you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
Thanks.
I want to talk about the experience. So you submitted that off. What was the experience of the response you got? And I'd love to step through that whole experience. Like, walk us through the experience of Patrick getting this response back from Jody and
All
the
right.
team. So,
Okay, so I'm there in school as I do, and I'm doing my writing and whatnot, and I see my phone starts ringing, unknown number. That's weird. 3 2. Well, that's strange area code. Like, okay, I'll get to that. And then I go to the message, and of course it's Joni Labakwi from California. And she's like, could I call her back? Of course I can call her back. So I'm frantically trying to call this number, but I don't know what went through. I got the wrong number. So I'm calling some random place in Pennsylvania and I'm frantically emailing her and eventually I did get a hold of her and she's just such a lovely person and she's been doing this for who knows how many years. Well, she does. And you could tell that she just loves what she's doing. She loves talking to the winners and it must have been half an hour. We were just talking back and forth about writing and the judges in California and whatnot. So She told me I was pretty fortunate being in the fourth quarter because everything is much more abbreviated. They want to get the magazine to print, so maybe I didn't have to wait as long. So she said, "Okay, you're a finalist. Can you come down to California?" Oh yeah. What's the date? April 10th is the gala. Perfect. Because initially I was looking online and I thought it was April 25th or so, which put it dead between two Metallica concerts I was going to in April as well. So I mean, I could have flown back and forth really quickly. That would have been quite a 3 days, but I was overjoyed that it was a couple of weeks earlier. And boy, 3 days later, she gave me the phone call, and this was the one that said, you've won number one. And I thought, wait, first, can you say that again? Because I was in disbelief because I'm a strategic thinker. I went over in my head all the things that she might say and my responses, and I don't know if you call that social anxiety or what, but you want to think about these things, right? I had not planned out being first. So when she said that, I had to just walk around the school for a bit. It was at the end of the day. So she called me right after, and I'm just walking around. Going to Hollywood. Got the story published, and it, it's in disbelief for a while. And the cool thing about this contest is that every time I think I'm getting to an equilibrium where things are processing, okay, I get it now, then it would more and more and more. Okay, I'm off the plane, I'm in the hotel, I'm talking to these judges, I'm in the same room with all these people and all these amazing authors, and okay, I'm getting it. And then the gala, and then now I'm doing podcasts with Mark, and it never ends, but it's a good thing. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of petering out, but that was definitely the phone call. It was definitely life-changing for sure.
Wow. And I imagine, I mean, that must have been a great experience, because apart from going into the workshops and the 24-hour story and all of you do a lot of work. It's not just all fun and games, right?
Oh yeah,
You're in class all week. You're focused on, okay, you got to write this story now. And then you get the experience of also seeing the artwork that accompanied, right? The artists who were
yeah.
winners were assigned one of them was assigned your story, and they open the doors and you walk in and there's the art and you find your piece. Did you find yours right away?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I was worried that I wouldn't, and all of us authors were worried. Coming down the elevator, we were saying, "Oh, what if we don't see ours? I don't know. What if I'm the first guy?" And
Yeah,
then none of us had that problem.
yeah,
We all saw it eventually, and oh yeah. And I had seen Cam's style of art in the art reveal, so I knew that he was aptly suited to, it's a chaotic kind of story. It's very
yeah, yeah,
whimsical, and his submissions to the contest that they were showing in that particular Meet the Artists Zoom meeting, I just knew he was going to take care of me. And sure enough, he did. He had that particular scene. It's always a little bit silly, and yet there's a serious undertone because there's
yeah,
this guy, kind of the master of time, ripping apart the pizza dough.
yeah.
And time is kind of like that. How is it? Well, it's a little bit soft magic there, but it'll come together after a while. And I think he did a fantastic job. He really brought it to life.
Right.
Um, and it was surreal because when you see your story that it's in my head, it's on paper, and you have to see a completely different artist in a different medium bring it to life in a completely different way, you realize that this is no longer yours, and that's a good thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
out there, it belongs to everyone now,
yeah,
and there's a bit of a separation anxiety there, I guess you could
yeah.
say, but in a good way. I realize that's the nature of art. You got to let it go, get it out there, and other people are going to process it in all kinds of ways that you can't even imagine, and that's awesome.
It reminds me, I've been a bookseller for a long time, and when Seinfeld released a book called Sign Language, which is just his observations, like the humorous bits that stand up from the TV series, the back of the book said, "This is my book, but you can read it." And that's the thing, like this is my story, but now it's your story, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the reader, it's however they interpret it. It's as you said before, it's that spark that goes off that you've led them to. So
Yeah, it's a little bit of alchemy there because you have almost the two poles of the lightning bolt, And you as the author can be sparking all you want there, but you need that other aspect of it to have that creativity go between them. It's getting all mystical, but
Yeah.
that's how I see it anyway. You need readers to really bring life to your stories. And they're not completely yours, but that's okay.
Yeah, that is okay. Now, speaking of the spark, you went into education, and I know you see sparks all the time.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you don't see them, sometimes you see them, and sometimes you see them in unexpected places, I imagine. What was the genesis of getting into teaching?
Well, for teaching, I mean, initially I was looking for something to do with my literature degree so I
Right.
can write. And so I got into it for reasons there. But I quickly realized I'm making a difference in a lot of kids' lives. And the first few years of my career, I was in another board and I was in alternative education. And I taught to some, fairly rough schools around the city. And they would say, "Oh, it's Mr. McPhee's back. Oh, hey." And I realized education's a funny thing, but when you get through to kids, when you realize you've transformed a young person's life in a way, and I had a few say that to me, like your class was a sanctuary, your class was a haven for me, which wow, I'm getting goosebumps here. When I realized I was just helping to build up kids, then that's addicting. That's something you want to keep doing and going back to. And
Hmm.
I have learned over the years that not every kid is ready to be a student. And that's not necessarily on me as the teacher. There's all kinds of factors in kids' lives that get in the way of them being in your class ready to learn.
Right.
And sometimes there were some cases where I, as the teacher, I saw no progress in class. This kid was just sitting there, he had his head down on the desk, and I'm not singling out any kids because there were a few of them. So they might be wondering, is that me? That there's a bunch of you out there. But a few years later, I would see this same kid in grade 12, and he'd say, "Oh, sir, I just the program it really helped me out because." Yeah, I wasn't really doing a lot there, but it just gave me a place to be,
Hmm.
and it kept me from sinking lower. And then when I got my stuff settled, I was able to move on and process again. And
Wow.
that's the thing with education that you can't always measure with a standardized test every few weeks or every few months because there are some kids who are just going to be you know, just
Right.
flat for a while, and suddenly when they're ready, they're going to shoot right up. And if you happen to be teaching here, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'm a super teacher. And if you happen to be over here, what am I doing wrong? But that's the nature of young people. They grow in weird ways.
And you don't,
It's a
yeah, you don't always know that you're actually reaching someone, that
yes.
what you're talking about, what you're sharing, what you're, getting them to think about or consider, don't even realize that they're actually processing it, but they're not maybe showing it or prepared to embrace it until something else happens or
Yeah.
stops happening, right?
They'll surprise you in ways when older students or graduated students come back and said, "Oh, I remember this. I remember when you stood on the desk and you were yelling at the TV and oh yeah, I remember that. That was or oh boy, at the time I was demonstrating social media. So I went to the hallway and I started saying, "Hey, it's springtime, everybody. It's amazing. Don't you love spring? Hey, everyone give me?" And the kids in my class, you can feel the embarrassment wafting off of them. And I went back in and said, "That's what you all do every day on social media. You're just shouting randomly, hoping other people join in the conversation." And there was this moment of, "Oh,
Ah,
okay." And it's a lot of time, like they won't remember tests and they won't remember random lessons, but the random art project or the video you show or the joke or the oddest thing will resonate with kids. And they'll say, "I remember that from your class, sir."
yeah,
And it's just really cool being part of people's lives, and you get to try to build them up in whatever way you can. It's a great job.
that is fantastic. And you've taught various grades, various subjects. I think
Yeah.
it's like phys ed, which you call dodgeball.
Played a lot of dodgeball. I coached my class to the local dodgeball championship. We had a few other classes,
Right on.
and we did drills. Like when the ball goes beyond you, don't turn around because that's how they get you. You have to just measure the angles. We're doing some math as well. So
Yeah.
just, all kinds of things. And then, of course, I go from there right up to Hamlet and Macbeth. And Hamlet's something you can really sink my teeth into because there's all these different meanings and whatnot. And it's just
Yeah.
a whole spectrum of different things to do.
Oh man, fantastic stuff. So you got the big gala event, right? It's where you're on stage and like the black tie event and receiving the award and doing the acceptance, and then the big gigantic book signing. What have you got? Have you done other events? Have you done some stuff related to this book or some of your other writing?
Not yet. I do have a book signing scheduled for August
Okay.
here in Hamilton. So August 9th, I believe, with yours truly.
I'm
And
honored that I get to be there with you. That'll be an exciting
that'll be
afternoon.
great. Well, sorry, you go ahead.
No, no, no. I'm saying I'm definitely looking forward to that. But then again, you've also busy in the school year too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've been doing a lot there. A lot of podcasts, a lot of talking to various people, and everybody's so nice. It's great meeting people and having these conversations and the back and forth. I was thinking of Dragon Con, but I think it's just been such a busy year. I have to bow out this
Yeah,
year. It was a tough decision because I really wanted to go, but we're already saving for next year, and hopefully I'll have a couple of books in tow by
right.
then, and I'm not going to be that guy who says, buy my book. I'll just, I'll just have one there in
Yeah,
the background. But I'm looking forward to the marking report card fugue being over and then
yeah,
getting back into writing in a big way in just a few days. That'll be fantastic.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I have that tension in this house as well, as Liz is wrapping up her end of year stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That's always a really busy time where I don't really see much of her in the evenings as she's still working on stuff for the next day.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
get to
Because
see her again. I get to see
she
her
has to
again
look
in
over
July.
all the report cards. I just have to do one report
Yeah, she
card.
has to go through all the report cards, but then
Oh,
also
boy.
she loves putting stuff together for the kids. So the grade six, not the graduation, but the send off. She's created a video that features every single kid in the class in the school or
That's
grade six class that
fantastic.
she's interviewed. And so as they
Wow.
walk across the screen, as they walk across the stage to say goodbye, because they're not getting a diploma, you see their video and they say something about what they learned, and it's like, whoa, that's kind of cool. Grade
Wow.
six, we didn't even do any. It was just like, okay, you're off to grade seven now. So,
Is that like a JK to 6 school where they have
yeah, it's a
like
JK
the
to six
gloss?
school. Yeah, so
Oh,
then they're going to
okay.
go to a middle school or to a high school, depending on
Got
where
it.
they're heading off to in the next year.
Okay.
And so there's like all this extra work. But so let's, as we get close to wrapping up this conversation, what's some advice you've already given some advice to younger writers or beginning writers, but what's some advice that you would want to endow upon, that next generation of writers or those who are thinking, oh, I've never submitted my stuff anywhere because I don't think I'm good enough yet. Any sort of advice you'd love to share with them?
I guess so. Oh boy, how much time do you have? I could, I guess some general advice is the back and forth between you have to be no, let's not say arrogant, let's say bold. You have to be bold in order to put your story out there, and you have to receive it with a humble heart when people are responding to it. And the reader is always right. So if someone is not understanding something, I explained that on page two. Well, maybe you didn't explain it very well on page two. Maybe you might want to go over it again on page 10. And don't just repeat it. Maybe have a character talk about it. So we're learning about this character as well. And, um, I think there are so many great resources out there. You don't have to reinvent this whole concept of creative writing. I know a lot of people think, no, it's just art. You should just have it innately. Maybe you have some creativity innately, but the tools, the structure, I did not have any of that. And I did everything from the Writers of the Future workshop, Brandon Sanderson's YouTube series. It's completely free. He just did a new bunch of them. He goes everything from world building to magic to characters to conflict. It's all there. Great courses, uh, random books I got. I could list a whole bunch, but once you get some feedback, and preferably feedback from professionals, but feedback from just random people just as readers, that works as well. And you might think, okay, my story is a little flat, or they didn't like this character, or they thought this dialogue was kind of clunky. You're going to learn your strengths and your weaknesses. And there's so many resources out there. Like if you don't know dialogue, if people are giving you feedback saying, your dialogue's kind of lame, man. I'm sorry. It's just not really zipping along for me. There's whole books just on dialogue, just completely on that. Entire courses. There's a wealth of resources available, but in order to use them effectively, you need to know your weaknesses. In order to know your weaknesses, you need to get feedback. You need to be open to receiving that. I think that's the biggest piece of advice I can give.
Awesome. That is fantastic. Patrick, can you please let my listeners know where they can find you online?
Sure. I'm frequently on X/Twitter, so MacPhee225. I post a lot of stuff there. That's probably my home. I'm also on Facebook, Patrick MacPhee. But my main website is patrickmacphee.com, where I've got a few blog entries on writers of the future. I'll be making a few more as well. And I have those sample stories as well. It's only a couple right now, but Rome wasn't written about in a day, as they say.
Awesome. Thanks for hanging out with me today, Patrick.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
I really enjoyed this conversation with Patrick, and I wanted to get this episode out the door really quickly, so I went with an interview that I just did because it was still fresh of mind, and it actually meant that doing the show notes, etc., didn't take me as much time, right? Because oftentimes, weeks or months will pass, and then I go back into it, and I was like, oh yeah, now I remember. So it was fresh of mind, so that was great. But the first reflection that I had is just how much a teacher can transform a young person's life. And I was so impressed and inspired by Patrick's very clear and very dedicated passion to that. His understanding of the children and their situations, especially understanding that some of them are not yet ready, and holding himself accountable in some ways for that, rather than putting it all on them. They have enough on their plate. And then the value that he places on building them up, that he sees his role as supporting and building them up. And he is like one of those amazingly inspiring teachers. I was reminded of just the passion that my partner Liz, as a principal, has for the children and the families and the teachers and the staff, all of the people that she calls members of the education team. She doesn't use hierarchy. When she moves to a school, she gets rid of that, reserved parking for the principal. She's just another staff member. Yes, she's in charge, and yes, she controls the show, but everyone's a member of the learning team. Every student is a member of the learning team. Every, custodial staff, maintenance staff, the staff that works in the office, the teachers, the early childhood educators, the parents, the families are all members of the same education team. And Liz's passion and love for her students and wanting to give them something, reminding everyone that the reason they're all there is on behalf of the students, inspires the heck out of me. And I saw that same spark in Patrick, and it just warms my heart so much, because I think about so many of the amazing teachers and educators in my own life who have impacted me and influenced me, and even like teachers from kindergarten and grade 1 and grade 5 and grade 6 and high school that I still reflect on. I still reflect on the things they talked about, the things they taught me, the things I learned, not just about the subject we were studying, but about life in general. And often, as Patrick said, often you remember those moments more than you remember the lesson of why I can't remember when this treaty was signed, or when this bill was passed, or when this war happened, like the specific dates. But I remember some of those nuances that were probably related to the care and the humanity that the teachers put in. So as a reflection, I want you to think about those people who've impacted you, whether they've been teachers or mentors or whatever they were, and maybe reach out and thank them, because I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we acknowledge the folks who have helped us along the way. I've done several episodes of this podcast. Thanks for the inspiration, and several of them have been for people I've known as teachers in my past, educators. I wanted to thank them. Sometimes I've had the opportunity to thank them while they're still alive, and sadly, other times when they've passed on. So I'm asking you in the next week or so to just reach out and say thanks to somebody that has inspired or educated you, the way that Patrick inspires and builds up the students in his classes. The other thing I'm going to reflect on, and yes, this is a longer one or a longer reflection, but it's that contest. Patrick talked about, not thinking he was good enough to submit to the Writers of the Future contest. And if you're writing speculative fiction, if you're writing family-friendly, no adult language, swear words, or adult situations, family-friendly speculative fiction, so science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and this can be upwards of, I think the word limit is like 10, 15, like 1,000, 20, like it's pretty long. Every quarter you can submit, if you have not yet made professional rates. And so on their website, you can go to writersofthefuture.com and you can check out the parameters. But if you haven't pro'd out, which is what they call it, like if you've had so many pro sales and made X amount of money as a professional writer, then you're considered pro'd out. But if you haven't yet done that, what's the harm in submitting your story to Writers of the Future? Because if you get to one of the finalists for the year, you got 12 of those writers end up getting a free week in Hollywood, in Los Angeles, and getting trained by some of the most amazing and talented New York Times best-selling science fiction and fantasy writers out there. I'm there as well, training you. So I'm training you about the business of writing, and I'm one of those. I use air quotes when I say this. I'm one of those youngins who has a different perspective about being a hybrid author. Going with traditional publishing as well as embracing self-publishing, and that's one of the reasons why I know that I was invited to be a judge, partly because it's sort of like there's some new things that authors can do. So just learning about contracts and the business of traditional publishing in New York is not all the things anymore. It's still a very relevant area, but also having that. But then the other aspect, and this is how one of the reasons why they pick so many of the judges, obviously their success, and I guess I have been very successful in the business of writing and publishing aspect. If not, I have also been moderately successful as a fiction writer or writer of, nonfiction and stuff like that. But it's the care. And it goes back to that reflection. It's that thing that Patrick does. Every single one of the judges cares about and wants to pay it forward to the next generation of writers. So if you've got short fiction and you haven't pro'd out yet, you should consider doing what Patrick does. Hey, he can't win anymore, so he can't submit because he's already pro'd out with that story. But write a single short story a quarter, you submit, and if you don't end up winning, at least you've got a year has passed and you have 4 new short stories, and that's always a great thing. I still have my quiver full of a bunch of short stories that I still haven't found a home for that I could leverage for various things when I get invited to anthologies or things like that. So again, the benefit isn't just if you win. The benefit is going through the process of writing those stories. But that's really 2 long rambling reflections, but I really did enjoy this interview with Patrick. I'm looking forward to getting to hang out with him at Coles in Hamilton, Ontario in August. We'll be doing a signing there. Obviously, he'll be signing the Writers of the Future, that beautiful volume. I guess as a judge, I can sign that book as well. And I imagine they're going to bring in my Haunted Hamilton as well, since it's going to be in Hamilton. And my goal is to try to get send that out to my newsletter and let them know that I'm going to be with this brilliant writer from Hamilton. You got to come. You got to read his story. You got to come check him out, etc. Speaking of which, the links to Patrick's website and the short stories he mentions, I'm really curious to read, are free. You can check them out over on his website, patrickmacphee.com/stories. But there will be links in the show notes at starkreflections.ca for that and other things that we talked about, including the Writers of the Future contest, so you can check it out if you're interested. But that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I love my patrons. I love the support my patrons give me, but everyone who listens to this podcast is helping support the podcast, and I truly do appreciate you letting me bend your ear every week. If you want to support the podcast apart from just listening to it, which is amazing, thank you so much, feel free to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. They actually do help. As we know as authors, reviews actually help, so that could help. But I know it takes time. The other thing that you can do to help is share this episode or any episode of the podcast that you've found value in with someone else that you think would get some value from it, because that's helping them, it's helping me, and it's helping you, because when you give something cool to someone that you know they can appreciate, you feel value in that. But as I said, that's it for this episode. Until next week, and until next episode, this is, as always, Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.